we have an interesting comment to start with, sent to us from the Door of El. It's called the Edinburgh Review, and the year was 1836. So we're going back into the past, looking at this review, and we might get an idea of some of the prevailing ideas and opinions of the time, which we'll go into later in the video. Just want to say welcome to the new subscribers, those that have recently joined the channel. Let's quickly recap for those and also maybe others that just come across this video. Why have we got the plains of Sennar highlighted here? We used this map, the 1710 map of Africa, looking at this land of Nubia, and we noticed Sennar. And we're creating our own map, considering this region for the land of Shinar of the Bible. So this is why I think this comment is very useful and could be important, the way it's telling us about the plains of Sennar. If we go to the Bible, Genesis chapter 11, this is telling us the story of the Tower of Babel, where it says they found a plain in Shinar. So it might just be a very simple point to make, but if we are considering the land of Shinar of the Bible in this region, it's important that the landscape actually fits and makes sense. If this was a very mountainous region or full of swamps, not really conducive to be building megalithic structures, then you'd have to seriously question the map or the picture that we're starting. So I think that's very important, that the most simple things that we need to find or need to fit, we do have that with this comment, the plains of Sennar. So that's very important. We will speak about this, what's been said in the comment later in the video, but we're also going to focus on this part where it speaks about the pyramids of Ashur. Why did the explorer, Mr. Hoskins, refer to Meroe as Ashur? This is the explorer we're going to be speaking about in this video, George Alexander Hoskins, who lived from 1802 to 1863, born in Liverpool, in England, visited Egypt and Nubia, wrote a history of Ethiopia. We'll speak about some of these arguments later in the video. Just wanted to show you who we're speaking about. Why did this explorer refer to ancient Meroe as Ashur? And we see this map for ancient Meroe in the land of Sudan and the pyramids. So also many pyramids to the south of Egypt. And that's going to be a part of the argument and debate we will look into later in the video. So we could get excited about this because on our map we have Ashur, son of Shem. We learned from the book of Jubilees that the land of Shinar fell for Ashur. So that's why this comment is very interesting. We also were thinking about the book of Jubilees with the mountains of Ashur, and we said we're still not sure what does it mean by the mountains of Ashur, and where could they be? Should we consider that the mountains could be pyramids? That would be interesting. But I would like to say, for me, I don't think that would work, because when we were analyzing the portion that came for Lud, the mountains of Ashur would need to reach the Great Sea, which we learned would be the Mediterranean Sea. So the mountains of Ashur would need to reach the Great Sea. So I don't think that would work for the pyramids of Nubia. So what is being said here with the pyramids of Ashur? Let's look at a potential answer. If we go to a book called The Chronicles of Jeremiel. This is a bit confusing. We'll try unravel this confusion we're going to read here. It says, from this land came Ashur. So here we have a mentioning of Ashur, but this is not Ashur, son of Shem. It says, i.e. Bel, the son of Nimrod. And Bel begat Ninus, who built the great city of Nineveh. We'll come back and try explain this confusion. Let's get some clarification by going to the Bible. This is the King James Version. It introduces Nimrod and speaks about the cities that Nimrod built, about this kingdom in the land of Shinar. But then it says in verse 11, out of that land went forth Ashur and builded Nineveh. So now, according to the KJV, Ashur built Nineveh. But is this Ashur son of Shem? If we go to a different Bible, the NIV, it doesn't say Ashur. This interpretation is saying that Nimrod built Nineveh, so that it's continuing to speak about Nimrod. From that land he went to Assyria, where he built Nineveh. But could both Bibles actually be correct? If we go back to the Chronicle of Jeremiah. So the way to understand this confusion is by knowing what Bel means. We've spoken about this on the channel, that Bel means Lord. So it's a title. So Nimrod could have the title of Bel or Lord, but his father could also have the same title. So that could explain some of this confusion, because it says, from this land came Ashur. So we're thinking Nimrod. Then it says, i.e. Bel, the son of Nimrod. So that wouldn't make sense. And then it says, and Bel begat Ninus. And Ninus could be another name for Nimrod. And we learned this from, there are scholars that connect Ninus with Nimrod, and also Alexander Hislop with his work, The Two Babylons, connecting Belus with Cush. So that's what we're trying to say, that Nimrod's father, Cush, could also have the same title of Bel or Belus. So if we go back, we can see that does make sense. It says, and Bel begat Ninus. Or you could say, and Cush begat Nimrod. So it's important for us to be aware of this, that Nimrod can also go by the name of Ashur. So the KJV is not wrong. It's just if we're not aware of these names for Nimrod, we could get confused about this, where it introduces Nimrod and then it says Ashur. It's not changing to a different person. So that would mean that the NIV would be correct. The way it doesn't actually say Ashur, just continues to speak about Nimrod. But then what about this comments from the Door of El, from the Edinburgh Review, about the pyramids of Ashur, referring to ancient Meroe as Ashur? Very interesting, because that could make sense for our picture, because we're asking about the land of Shinar, the land of Nimrod in this region. And if you have the pyramids of Meroe being referred to as the pyramids of Ashur, could it be in reference to Nimrod? So that would be very important, if that's, those are true connections. Another thing that could help from this comment and what we're speaking about is something that doesn't make sense when we read this portion for Ashur. It didn't make sense to me where it says, and for Ashur came forth the second portion, all the land of Ashur. Why would you phrase it that way? But maybe it's not referring to Ashur, son of Shem. What if this is referring to Nimrod or Bel? Then that would actually make more sense if you read that in that way. So we could say, and for Ashur came forth the second portion, all the land of Nimrod. That would read better. Let me know what you think about that, because it gives us something very interesting to think about for the land of Ashur And also the mountains of Ashur. Could it be the mountains of Nimrod or the mountains of Babel? And that might help us, well, it could give us something to think about, to try explore, to see can we solve some of these things that we're still not sure about. I picked out some interesting quotes for us to look at from the source George Hoskins' Travels in Ethiopia and the History of Meroe by Robert G. Morcott. And there's interesting drawings that come with the work. Let's try get some idea of the perspective of George Hoskins on Meroe. I have described Meroe, such as she must have been in the zenith of her greatness, the emporium of the commerce of interior Africa, the cradle and early seat of arts, science, and civilization. Describing ancient Meroe as a cradle civilization and greatness to ancient Meroe, I would like to read from this page, which we used for just to get an idea of a bit of a biography. Hoskins followed the Greek and Roman authors and dated many of the monuments, such as the pyramid cemeteries, as earlier than those in Egypt. So he's of the opinion that Meroe is earlier than Egypt. Let's read one of the reasons to support his theory. One reason that Hoskins gives for accepting the classical tradition, and this is going to be important when we look at the critical reception of the work, is based on an ecological interpretation of the development of the Nile Valley. He argues that in the earliest period, the lower Nile, Egypt, was uninhabitable, and that gradually denudation of the agricultural land further south caused people to move northward. Egypt became agriculturally rich as the fertile land around Meroe was washed away and the deserts encroached. This bold theory did not appeal to the Edinburgh Review. This is what is being debated here with the comment that we started with. The academics are criticizing this theory, so now we know a bit more about what's being discussed here. It's a very interesting theory, and I wonder how much of the Bible played a part of Hoskins' thinking, because it speaks about the flood here. So I wonder if this is, well, part of this theory involves the Great Flood, and then Egypt being largely uninhabitable, and that's a part of the theory for why he's saying that Meroe would have rose first and been a great civilization, a cradle civilization, and then influencing Egypt. So it's very interesting to think about how the Nile has affected and changed the landscape. But there was some criticism of his theory. Let's look now at the reception. And it's interesting that the person giving the review wanted to stay anonymous. That's interesting. Why is it that travelers are so perpetually losing sight of their proper vocation and wandering into all sorts of theories and unprofitable imaginations? And then it speaks about this being empty speculation and also being an annoyance. So this traveler putting forward these theories is causing an annoyance to these academics. But is this fair when we've already read that Hoskins is following the Greek and Roman authors or the classical tradition? So it's not as if he is imagining this all by himself. So that's interesting, this reaction. So we're trying to get an idea of some of these ideas and opinions in this period of time, around 1836. It says here, the reviewer is far less happy when it comes to Hoskins' enthusiasm for Meroe and his arguments for the greater antiquity of the southern cultures. And then there's some parts here that sound a little bit derogatory. notice this part here. Expressing an attitude that was common until very recent times, the reviewer begins his attack. It is not everyone who may relish the task of unrolling that dry and dusty mummy, Ethiopia. This quote here is very interesting. I'm not going to read it now, but we may come back to this if we're able to, about a major merchant empire. It's very interesting if you'd like to read that. And then notice the language here. We now dismiss the Ethiopians. So it sounds like it's saying, no, don't bring this before us again. We don't want to hear about this again. And then again, downplaying or almost derogatory in a way, where it says here about Meroe, if she flourished at all. And we read about George Hoskins saying that there was a greatness to Meroe. So it's just downplaying what Hoskins is trying to say. But why such a response to this? Because it's quite strange. I'm not sure if this is going to be a reasonable argument, but if we think about Egypt and then we think about ancient Meroe, there's not really a lot of separation in terms of distance. Neighboring countries, neighboring regions. Why, as you go a bit further south, do you get this attitude, this response to this region? So why is that? We said we're going to try elaborate further on the land of Nimrod. Let's just recap what we've spoken about in the video already about ancient Meroe being called Ashur, or the pyramids of Ashur, by that traveler, Mr. Hoskins. So when we were thinking about our map that we started with Shinar, we were thinking about this as the land of Nimrod. That's what we said. But is there more that we have to consider? In the Bible, it does actually refer to Assyria as the land of Nimrod. In the book of Micah 5:6, it says, "And they shall waste the land of Assyria with the sword, and the land of Nimrod in the entrances thereof. Thus shall he deliver us from the Assyrian, when he cometh into our land, and when he treadeth within our borders." So in the Bible, we do have a reference to the land of Nimrod. So are we fair to be asking about this, where it says the land of Ashur? Could it be the land of Nimrod or the land of Babel? But this is where it gets confusing, because we have Ashur, son of Shem, but now we're also considering Ashur, i.e. Bel, or Nimrod. If we go back to Genesis 10 and think about this again, where it says, the first centers of his kingdom were Babylon, Uruk, Akkad, and Calneh in Shinar. And then it says, from that land he went to Assyria, where he built Nineveh. So if we go back to our map and think about that. So starting in the land of Shinar, but then it says he went to Assyria, where he built Nineveh. So do we have to consider another region which is connected with Nimrod? That's what I'm starting to consider and think about. That we do have Shinar, which is going to be connected with Nimrod because of the Tower of Babel. But then it says that from that land he went to Assyria, where he built Nineveh. And when we think about all these things, maybe it starts to make sense when we come across this confusion or this debate, because we have the book of Judith, which is in the Apocrypha, and biblical scholars have said that it's right to stay in the Apocrypha because of what appears to be errors or discrepancies, because it says Nebuchadnezzar, king of Assyria. If we go to the book of Judith, it speaks about Nebuchadnezzar who reigned in Nineveh, but Nineveh was an Assyrian city, and Nebuchadnezzar we know as the king of Babylon. And it also says here that Nebuchadnezzar was king of the Assyrians, but we would expect to read Nebuchadnezzar king of the Babylonians. let's just read a few things from this defense for the book of Judith. It's quite interesting. From the work of Herodotus, it speaks about in Assyria there are many other great cities, but the most famous and the strongest was Babylon. So Babylon being described as an Assyrian city. And then there's another example here of Cyrus pressing on towards Babylon, and it speaks about Assyrians not coming out to meet him. And then it also speaks about the fact that this name Assyria may have been used in a wide sense. So can we make sense of this when we think about our map? So we're thinking about the land of Shinar with the Tower of Babel, so Babylon, but the book of Jubilees says that the land of Shinar came for Ashur, son of Shem. So in that sense, we would have Assyrians in this region. So it would make sense why there could be Assyrians defending Babylon, and it can make sense why the king of Babylon can also be described as the king of the Assyrians. So it does start to make sense, but can't say that it's straightforward, because what does it mean by the land of Nimrod? Or where should we be looking for this land of Nimrod, which is connected to Assyria? We also have a god called Ashur, the national god of the Assyrians. How do we view this as well? Because there may be some body of thought that this could be a form of ancestor worship. If we go back to the family tree for the Shemites, were the Assyrians worshipping Ashur, son of Shem? To me, I think it makes more sense that this god Ashur that the Assyrians were worshipping would be Nimrod. So if we go back to the Chronicles of Jeremiah, where it says Ashur, i.e. Bel, I think it would make more sense that the god that the Assyrians were worshipping was Bel or Ashur. So I think we can see that it's not straightforward, because if you're not aware that we have Ashur, son of Shem, but that we also have Bel being called Ashur, we could easily make mistakes, get confused, and then these works of the Apocrypha, like Judith, what seems to be errors, it might not be an error to say that Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, was also the king of Assyria, or you could say that he was the king of the Assyrians. So it could be very important, these details, and I can't say that I fully understand in terms of what it means by the land of Nimrod and the land of Assyria, but it could be important in terms of some of these discrepancies that we have. Remember how we said that the book of Jubilees says that Lud should be to the east of his brother Ashur, and that's not the way we have, well, it's not working with our map, because we have Lud to the west of Ashur. But maybe there's more for us to learn about Assyria, where this map could still work when we're able to fully understand all these different details. Thank you for watching this video. I look forward to seeing if we get some comments, if you're able to share or help further with this discussion. Thank you to Door of El for the comments that we can learn from and that we used for this video. In terms of the next one, I'm thinking about the comment that I referred to. I don't know if you read this. Making a video to explore this idea of a major merchant empire, and then also to continue with this map that we're working on. So hopefully we can continue further with this, and I look forward to seeing you in another video.